Okay. Sorry about that. I would like to invite from the School of Business and Public Administration, Dr. Ronald McNinch for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, students, and certainly esteemed guests. And I feel like I'm at an alumni association meeting with certainly with the chief and with others. It's always a pleasure to be able to chat with our students, and I'm always so impressed with the wonderful forums and events that Professor Uggan does on behalf of our school and university. I'm so envious of all of the neat things that he does to serve our community. And it's always wonderful in administrative law to have the wonderful topics like the topic that you're having today related to substance abuse. I am very pleased to see that the topics that we're discussing in our classes and in our forums and also here at the university directly fit into the needs of our community. Certainly substance abuse is a very important topic. It's one that we absolutely should be able to discuss and be able to help develop good policy on. I have to say that the history of how we treat substance abuse, whether it's a criminal issue or a public health issue, it's been a very unsteady one in the history of the United States. Typically, before 1920, there were very few drug laws in the United States. You could walk in and buy a bottle of aspirin in the store in 1910, and if you had a headache, you buy the bottle of aspirin. But if you wanted to buy a bottle of heroin and a kit to shoot up the heroin, you could buy that also in a public store. These drugs were widely available. They were free. Everyone knows Coca-Cola originally had cocaine in it. There was simply no regulation. There was no laws related to drugs, and these drugs were not illegal. Once alcohol became illegal, once we had prohibition, there's this thing we call in public administration called the law of unintended consequences. So the law of unintended consequences was people started using not illegal drugs, but using other drugs such as heroin or cocaine or marijuana as proxies for alcohol. And so in order to deal with these proxies for alcohol being used, we ended up seeing a huge number of regulatory efforts made by the federal government to regulate drugs and make drugs illegal. And so that's pretty much the basic history of why we have the illegal drugs and legal drug regime, why we regulate drugs. Certainly the Food and Drug Administration was established by Theodore Roosevelt. There's a very famous story about this. He was eating breakfast one morning and he was reading that men were losing their fingers in sausage making machines, and the companies that were selling the sausages sold them anyway. That sickened Theodore Roosevelt, so he established a food safety and drug safety organization through the FDA through executive order. And that's the basic history of how we regulate or why we regulate drugs and how we regulate drugs. Dealing with this issue as a health policy rather than a criminal justice policy is a novel idea. I have to say, a lot of the efforts to simply throw all criminal laws out the window and replace them with something else, that's a foolhardy effort. If we do things like change our policies for these very important areas, we need to do so rationally and incrementally. We need to do so with a lot of thought and not simply in a wishy-washy sort of way, go from one policy to the other. So certainly being able to discuss these important topics and being able to have our wonderful experts like we have today assist in this important conversation is absolutely going to add to our community efforts in this area. One of the problems that we have on Guam is we have an issue of what I term policy isolation, and that is because we live on a small island and we are isolated, we're not under the direct coordination or communication with other U.S. mainland policies and laws. And so often our laws can be problematically enforced, or they can be problematically implemented here. And so that's why we have a really a very strong backbone with our federal judiciary here. So I'm certainly pleased to see certainly our district judge, Judge Gatewood, is a part of this conversation. Welcome, Judge Gatewood. I think that having our judiciary in these very collegial and important policy conversations absolutely adds both to the esteem of this event and also just to the importance of this event. So we greatly appreciate the assistance of our federal judicial officials. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and pleasure to be a part of this process today. Nothing makes professors prouder than seeing our students do well, and this forum absolutely lets me know that our students are doing very well. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Dr. McNinch, for those wonderful remarks. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of distinguished attendees we have joining us here today. We have the Honorable Judge Alberto E. Tolentino, Superior Court of Guam. Mr. Christopher Francisco, Supervisor at the Lighthouse Recovery Center. Alicia A.G. Limtiaco, Esquire, Regulation Counsel, Office of Regulation Counsel, Supreme Court of Guam, Guam Judicial Center. And Dr. Rivera, University of Guam, School of Business and Public Administration Chair. Now I would like to welcome our panelists to the forum. The Honorable Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court of Guam, Judge Francis Tidingo Gatewood. Chief of Guam Police Department, Chief Stephen Ignacio. Director of the Salvation Army's Lighthouse Recovery Center, Director Valerie Reyes. Substance Abuse Program Supervisor for Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center's New Beginning Program, Ms. Athena Duenas, and Advocate for Individuals with Substance Use Disorder, Mr. Jesse Mendiola. Hafa day and good morning. Welcome to today's forum. The first panelist we have is the Honorable Frances M. Tidingo Gatewood. She is the Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court of Guam, Ninth Circuit. Chief Judge Tidingo Gatewood was first nominated in 2006 by former U.S. President George W. Bush and confirmed by the United States Senate as the nation's first federal woman judge of Chamorro and Pohnpeian descent. Chief Judge Tidingo Gatewood graduated from the George Washington Senior High School in 1976. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Marquette University, Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1980 and completed her Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law, Kansas City, Missouri in 1983. Chief Judge Tidingo Gatewood began her law career as a law clerk for the Jackson County Circuit Court in Kansas City, Missouri from 1983 to 1984. She became Guam's first Chamorro woman prosecutor at the Guam Office of the Attorney General from 1984 to 1988 and was appointed as the chief prosecutor from 1990 to 1994. Chief Judge Tidingo Gatewood later served as a trial judge in the Superior Court of Guam from 1994 to 2002 and was appointed as a chief judge in the Superior Court of Guam. Chief Judge Tidingo Gatewood now presides as the Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court of Guam for the Ninth Circuit. Our next panelist is our very own MPA alumni, the Guam Police Department Chief Stephen Ignacio. Stephen Ignacio joined the Guam Police in 1987 and graduated from the 28th Police Training Cycle. Chief Ignacio has been employed with the Guam Police for over 34 years, where he has worked in the Criminal Investigation Division, Highway Patrol, Support Division, and Administration Division. Captain Ignacio is among a few Guam police officers who successfully graduated from the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division Special Agent Course. Captain Ignacio holds both a bachelor and master's degree in public administration from the University of Guam and an associate's degree in law enforcement administration from the Guam Community College. In addition to being a police officer, Captain Ignacio has been an adjunct instructor at the Guam Community College for nearly 20 years. Captain Ignacio and his family reside in Barrigada, where he is also a member of the Barrigada Municipal Planning Council. He is married to Betty Jean Ignacio, and they have 3 children and a grandson. The third panelist we have is Ms. Valerie Reyes. She's the Director of Salvation Army's Lighthouse Recovery Center, also known as LRC. Ms. Reyes' career began at the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center as a New Beginnings Division Supervisor. Thereafter, she worked at Sanctuary Incorporated. Director Reyes is a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed professional counselor, a licensed mental health counselor, and a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's certified internationally for alcohol and drug counseling. And in addition, she holds a certification in substance abuse counseling. Director Reyes has more than 15 years experience working with people with substance use disorders. And as a panelist, she will bring valuable contributions to the discussions that will address Guam's community. Our fourth panelist is Ms. Athena Duenas. Ms. Athena Duenas is the Substance Abuse Program Supervisor for the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center New Beginnings Program. Ms. Duenas received her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Portland, Oregon, and a master's of art in counseling from the University of Guam. She is a certified abuse counselor and a licensed professional counselor. Ms. Duenas has been providing substance abuse counseling for more than 21 years and is an official trainer for several evidence-based programs such as the Claire Matrix model, motivational interviewing, and driving with care. Ms. Duenas is also the certification administrator for the Pacific Behavioral Health Collaborating Council and Certification Board. Our fifth panelist is Mr. Jesse Mendiola. Mr. Jesse Mendiola is an advocate and a recovered addict. Mr. Mendiola is a Guam native, born and raised on the beautiful island of Guam. In his own words, Mr. Mendiola was raised in a wonderful home with love and was provided all the finer things in life one could ask for. He's a father of 3 children, a grandfather of 4. He's a recovered addict with 23 years of active drug use and 6 years of sobriety, and a former criminal ex-convict, drug addict, and all labels one could think of. Mr. Mendiola's resume in life differs from what most resumes are composed of. In his own words, "This is me, I am him, and I am here to give back to my community." Today's forum format consists of 3 25-minute segments. Each segment will have questions centered around our panelists' experiences and expertise in their fields or line of work. This forum is meant to foster open dialogue amongst the panelists and in no particular speaking order. For the sake of time, we ask our panelists to please keep your responses to no more than 5 minutes each question. For our guests participating in the Zoom room, please feel free to type your questions in the chat section. In the event that we are unable to answer your questions during the forum time, please note that we will have our MPA candidates respond to your inquiries at a later time. Please provide your contact information when submitting your questions. If you are not open to sharing that publicly, you can direct your questions to Ms. Sheena Alvarez through a direct message in the Zoom chat. All right, thank you. Now on to our questions. So for our first question, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero is looking into pardoning individuals who have had past misdemeanor marijuana-related crimes in Guam. How would your organization or agency address this in terms of policies? And do you agree with the decriminalization? I'll have the Honorable Miss Judge Taringo Gatewood go first, and we'll just go around the room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our Master of Ceremony and to Professor McNitch and to your class at the university. I'm honored to be here, and you know, I can't publicly indicate whether I agree or disagree with a policy decision by a governor or anybody. As you know, as a judge, it's our job to interpret the law. It's not our job to indicate whether we agree or disagree. The only time that we do that is if it's brought before the court, and of course, if it there's an issue of constitutionality or unconstitutionality of a law. So in terms of the local interpretation, I would leave that, of course, to my colleagues on the Superior Court of Guam and the Supreme Court in terms of how we handle it federally, I would have to wait until there is a decriminalization of marijuana laws at the federal system. As you probably know, and I'll just keep it brief, there have been many or several attempts by certain House of Representative members to decriminalize marijuana usage, to do a lot of things with marijuana, including moving it out of being a Schedule I controlled substance at the federal system. So unless and until that happens, I can't really do anything as a judge. I can only do what I'm empowered to do in the federal system. I will say that we hardly have any marijuana cases brought before the court. I've been a federal judge. I've been a judge 29 years, and I've been a judge, 15 of the 29 years have been in federal court. So maybe I've only had 2 federal marijuana, maybe 3 marijuana violations, if at all. I hope that answers your question, at least where it comes from in the criminal context at the federal system. Thank you. Were you able to hear that, everyone?
Yes, that was perfectly clear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chief, if you can go.
Okay, hi. Good morning to the MPA students, Dr. McNish, Dr. Rivera, and all of those at UOG. Thank you very much again for having me as your panelist. It's as an honor, as an alumni, to participate, and I look forward to today's discussions. With respect to the question, as a chief of police, a member of the cabinet, and also a member of the Cannabis Control Board, I think this policy implemented by the governor is really in line with the following along with the decriminalization of marijuana. And so, I support the governor's. She actually has issued the executive order, and I believe she has already pardoned 2 people, to my knowledge, for their marijuana misdemeanor related crimes. And with us, our policy with the governor's office is we were asked to make sure that those that are considered to be pardoned, or those that are going to be pardoned, don't have anything else beyond just a small or a minor misdemeanor or a petty misdemeanor conviction. So as you recall, there is a statute, a former statute, which made possession of less than an ounce a petty misdemeanor. And those were actually handled through traffic citation, believe it or not, and was adjudicated through the traffic court. And so, unfortunately, though, because it is a conviction, it is a petty misdemeanor, it does show up on your record as a conviction. And so, I believe, that, this is in line, again, with marijuana decriminalization, and, allowing people the opportunity to move beyond a conviction of the nature, and so that they can become better employed or gainfully employed, in the business community, or even other job opportunities that may present itself. The only other thing I would like to mention, though, is as a member of the Cannabis Control Board, and I have brought this up many times, marijuana has been decriminalized to the point where it doesn't allow for what would be criminal activity within the field of the marijuana industry. For example, it's decriminalized it to the point where, even if you plant or manufacture hundreds and hundreds of marijuana plants, is decriminalized. And so I brought this up to the board, and it's something that we're going to be addressing probably later on. I think we're just trying to get past the hurdle of getting the rules and regulations passed and in place, so that the legal industry can get moving. And so, thank you very much for the question. And again, I'm excited to be here and participate and listen for the next for the next questions.
This is open to all the panelists. Any of the panelists want to answer the first question? You're more than welcome.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Hi, hey, thank you again for having me on this forum. It's an honor to be invited to this and participate in such a great discussion. You know, my opinion with the marijuana decriminalization, of course, it has been a long discussed topic on all levels, from the federal, local, and the state levels, primarily for medicinal purposes. And I do commend the governor for pardoning individuals of low-level offenses. And these individuals can and will have the opportunity to pursue things in life that would have otherwise prevented them. The second chance that they have been afforded could, open many doors of opportunities. Now, a pardon doesn't necessarily mean an expungement. It's more so a forgiveness. You know, only the courts, I believe, can order an expungement of a person's record. Well, that being said, let's not forget that marijuana is considered a gateway drug, which individuals often experiment with first, and in most cases leads to harder use of various kinds of drugs. Decriminalizing it doesn't change the fact that it alters one's faculties, one's motor functions, and as such, an approach to continue to treat them just as we would treat any individual with a substance abuse disorder. Alcohol, for example, is legal, yet we don't deny that alcoholics come and seek treatment for their addiction to alcohol. In kind, marijuana will probably fall into that same spectrum with regards to both being legal. In summation, I don't think policies would differ very much. We would, if I was a provider, I would probably take the same proactive approach in administering treatment and services as needed for individuals who are using marijuana and are seeking help.
Thank you. Thank you all for
Thank
your
you.
response. Anybody else from the panelists?
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm flattered being on a panel with a judge and a high-ranking police officer. In regards to providing services, we would approach it the same way we approach any other drug of abuse, in that if it becomes problematic, then we would work with the person to increase their motivation to make positive changes. The LRC is what's known as a total abstinence program, meaning that regardless if you believe a substance that you're taking is harmful or problematic or not, we ask that you stop all substance use once you enter our program. And simply for the fact that, because a substance use disorder is a brain disease. And when a person, one of the ways a person heals, the healing of the brain, is to stop all substance use. Any other mind-altering substances taken within the course of treatment will slow down that healing process. And so our policy, it's not going to affect our policy too much. We are a total abstinence program, but we do treat marijuana. It's not as much as alcohol or methamphetamine, but we have had clients come through with a cannabis use disorder, and so no changes to our policy. Do I agree with the policy? Yeah, I agree with the policy. I mean, I don't think that punitive action is the best way to rehabilitate people with substance use disorder, particularly for petty misdemeanors, simply because one of the diagnostic criteria for a substance use disorder is continued behavior despite social or negative consequences. And so if we're looking to rehabilitate people, maybe a different course of action is worth looking at. Plus, people with a misdemeanor, we put up barriers to services. They can't apply for SNAP. They might not be able to obtain gainful employment because of a conviction. And it would help to take down some of those barriers. And one of the things I think we need to look at is, when it comes to the treatment of substance use disorder, it's not just a change for the person, but societal change where we can reintegrate individuals back into society. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more input from anyone from the panel? Okay, now we'll be moving on to our next question. Does your agency offer programs that are available for Guam's people who suffer from substance use disorder? If so, please tell us about the programs and its benefits. And Your Honorable Judge Tadingo Gatewood, if I may, in addition to your response, would you please elaborate more on the drug reentry program?
Okay, thank you. I will. Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremony. There are many programs that address the substance use disorders, and it's based on the needs of the defendants that come before the federal court. My court and our U.S. Probation and Pretrial Services offices, we use the services within our community at Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, New Beginnings, Togi, contracted providers such as the Lighthouse Recovery Center and West Care Pacific Islands. All of them are excellent programs that we've been using for years. Sentences for those persons who have these substance use disorders are based, of course, on the offenses that are committed. And I received guidance from the federal law and youth sentencing guidelines. Let me just tell you that with regard to our drug offender reentry court, it's a reentry court that is comprised of individuals who have been convicted and imprisoned already for a federal offense. So they've come out of a federal time, having done their federal time in prison, and then they are now on supervised release. So they are now re-entering into the community. So it could be somebody that I sentenced 10 years ago, and he or she is now, their sentence is ended 1 month ago. Now they're in supervised release for, say, 3 years or 5 years. Once they get out, they re-enter, and the goal is to make sure that their re-entry is a safe one for not only them and a drug-free one, for not only them, but also for the community. So we have a specific way on how we allow those persons to come into the program. And I think it's been very successful. I think that the local court might have a post-conviction reentry court now. Previously, they didn't. They have a pretrial, and I'm pretty sure they'll talk about that later. But those are the programs that we use. And that's just a little glimpse of my program that we have at the federal court. The students at your university, at Guam Community Colleges and other high schools have come and observed the court system. So that's my answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now moving on to Chief, if you could put some input into it.
Thank you again. The Guam Police Department is a law enforcement agency. And so, we don't offer any treatment services for substance abuse disorder. But I'll tell you though, as the chief, what I do see through our enforcement efforts is a lot of arrest for those, who have substance abuse or use disorders. Meth, crystal methamphetamine or ice continues to be a pervasive problem on the island. And what we're finding, at the street level, especially through the patrol officers doing pullovers, is a lot of the street level users. It's not uncommon anymore to find ice pipes, ice paraphernalia for street level users during vehicle pullovers. And of course, they're arrested. But I support really any program that we can use to divert these people, to get them help, to get them off their addiction. And so, to that question, that's what I offer, is that, we support programs that would get these people off their addictions. Because if we can reduce addiction in Guam, we can reduce the demand for the drug on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now I would like to hear from Director Valerie Regis on the Lighthouse Recovery Center and your programs.
Good day, everyone. So the Lighthouse Recovery Center, we provide residential and outpatient treatment services, as well as continued care or social support. I agree with Chief that the person that we treat will stop committing crimes when they are in recovery. And we know that continued use will warrant more criminal activities. So I believe the more we treat a person, the more we can see the improvement in their families, in their social environment. we know that for every dollar spent in treatment, it saves about, I believe the last number was $9 in a return, because the police won't have to be processing, arresting, they won't be in custody. And so we've noticed that we have folks that come back to treatment a few times, and we just take them as they arrive with regards to where they are as far as their awareness of their drug use. We work with Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. We work with the Adult Drug Court. We work with the Adult Probation Office. And when we get folks into our treatment, we want them to address any warrants. We won't harbor, and we want them to be able to focus on treatment 100%. Just the other day, we had somebody who had, I think, 4 warrants, and we had to work with the local probation office to address that. And so our program is about 180 days, or it could be up to 30 days. It really depends on the need of the patient or the client. And if they are in residential treatment and then they go back to problematic substance use, we'll put them into our withdrawal management, which is up to from 7 to 14 days. And so when they're done with that, we move them back into residential. So they may enter into treatment at a certain level of care, and we can move them throughout the levels of care. We just continue to work with them at the level of care that we have them in. And we also work with their family members. We know that when we treat a person who suffers from substance use disorder, if we treat the family, the chances of long-term recovery is beneficial to the whole system, meaning the whole family system. And the longer that we keep them in treatment, the more chances they have of long-term sustained recovery. So the Lighthouse has been in existence since 2000, I believe, and 4, and we've had an excess of 500 clients at any given time here and there with regards to like data, where we are operating on a very small wait list at this point, but we're expecting that wait list to go up because Chief and his fine folks at the Guam Police Department keep arresting folks, and we're pending their arrival as soon as Miss Athena gets them and refers them over. And I'll turn the floor over to Miss Athena Dueñas.
Yes, thank you, Valerie. Well, thank you to the UOG class. I'm also honored to be invited to this. Valerie kind of hit everything on a nutshell. You know, we have so many programs going in all our substance use agencies, not just with Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, but that's like a whole hour session to talk about our treatment programs. But in a nutshell, you know, Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, we offer outpatient for our ASAM levels of care, which is outpatient level 1 and 2. And then we also offer our psychoeducation course for individuals who, you know, first-time offenders, not really sure if it's an addiction or not, kind of treatment. And we do, you know, we do a lot of what Valerie was saying, how we focus on the family. That's our biggest thing that's going on right now. We have we have an awesome partnership with the Guam Family Drug Court over at Superior Court of Guam. We're realizing that there's just so much to put into the efforts of individuals in recovery, especially with families. You know, the program is all about uniting the children and their parents after they've, you know, been arrested for drugs. So, you know, CPS gets involved, and they're another partner that we have in the community. So this program has really grown, and we're happy to also expand our programs in terms of opening up certain programs like Strengthening Families that works with the parent and the children, and reunification. So we have other, you know, family education programs there. I tell you, it'll be like a whole hour's worth of information that you'll need to know on our treatment programs. But we do have good partnership with the Lighthouse Recovery Center. We are the referring agency, so we see everybody before they get there. And we also provide our 3.7 withdrawal management unit for our individuals with opiates, severe opiate use and alcohol use, that provides them medication to help them kind of get off alcohol and opiate use. But we're still working on whether there's any medication to help individuals with methamphetamines, because that is still our main drug of choice. Valerie talked about data. We noticed in 2017 and 2018 that, you know, alcohol was always our #1 drug of choice on Guam since I've been working at the department for the last 20 years. And then it hit in 2018, 2017. We're now seeing it, we have more methamphetamine users coming through treatment, which is a great thing. But we've never, in the time that we've spent doing treatment, ever seen that number grow as much as it has. So, you know, we do what we can when we can. We partner with Togi. We have peers in-house in our programs. A lot of it is making sure our consumers have retention and treatment. And a lot of it is providing transportation, bringing them to class, taking them home. So, you know, a lot goes into substance use treatment. But right now we're really, really working on the family unit. That's our main focus. And benefits, there are a lot of benefits to treatment. Healthy homes, healthy families, to name just a few. Individuals who now have insurance and are actually seeing the doctor and getting their medical needs done. We do all that in-house as well.
Thank you for that wonderful response. Mr. Mendiola, do you have any input on this question?
Yeah, I don't represent any one agency, but I will speak on the benefits. I have been in the Lighthouse Recovery Center multiple times. I've been with New Beginnings. I've been with the adult drug court, and I walked away with a bag of tools from each program I've been in, and I didn't get it at once. It took me about maybe 12 years of in and out of treatment to fully grasp the concept of life without drugs. So the benefits one can gain or garner from any sort of treatment is the life I'm living right now, which is a life of sobriety, happiness, freedom, and a slew of other things. I commend the treatment providers out there, because for the lack of resources that are being afforded to them, they are doing their darn best and are actually, they're doing an amazing job in getting the word out there, helping our those individuals struggling with drug addiction and drug use to find a better way of life. Ms. Val told me when I was in treatment, I believe it was 2013, she said that there was only one thing that I needed to change. And, in retrospect, I was like, okay, what's that one thing? She said everything. So at that moment in time, it was like, man, it was a monumental feat to try and change everything. But it only took that one thing to change everything. And I finally found a new way of life. So those are that is a huge benefit of what these providers offer. When I was in the Lighthouse Recovery Center, they had this matrix module that taught me how to identify triggers, remove myself from environments of people, places, and things that compromise my my sobriety. And it's up to the individual themselves to use the analogy. I can have all the ingredients to bake a cake, but I must know the process of using those ingredients, or those ingredients would just sit there, and a big part of that process is me wanting to bake that cake. So a big part of a person's sobriety and recovery is that person wanting that change. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. Any further inputs before we move on to the next question?
Hi, I just wanted to say that when a person finds recovery, they become employable people. They pay taxes, they contribute to the community, and they're no longer arrested and rearrested. I'm sure Chief will agree when I say a person can get arrested on Monday and then Wednesday as well. And the police doesn't have to, they won't have to keep arresting the same folks. And so I think that getting them into treatment sooner than later is going to be beneficial to not just the person, their family, their kids, but also our community, because we don't have to pay for all that excess arrest and book and confine and book and release and GPD and DOC and all that stuff. But I just,
Thank you for that response, Director. So moving on to our third question, it's about the same as the second one, but what are the current transition programs available on Guam for substance abusers, and how can these programs improve? And are the programs getting enough support? Just go around the panelists, just like the last question, and just go from there.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. What you said, what are the current transition programs? I think I started a little bit and told you a little bit about our drug offender reentry program. In Chamorro, it's Program Hinatlam Tatlu, which means, in drug offender reentry, I mean, we're reentering into the community. And it's been very, I think it's been successful. I mean, we get people in that, first of all, like Mr. Mendiola said, you have to want it. Do I want it more than you? Do I as a judge, or does a family member want it more than the drug offender? More than the drug offender. If we do, it's not going to work. Like Mr. Mendiola says, it has to come from the heart and the soul of the person who's out there taking the drugs if they want to recover. And I think that that is so true, that you have to do that. And I think that the biggest transition issues, as Valerie Rages has said, and let me just say this, Valerie Rages is an angel. She's walked the walk and talked the talk. She's a recovering addict for over 21 plus years. So my defendants in drug court believe her. She speaks their talk. And so I believe her as a judge, that when she tells me, okay, this person's ready, that helps me make a decision. And Mr. Mendiola too is now a law-abiding citizen. It's taken him, like he said, 12 years plus years to figure out, how much does he love himself? Himself. Before you love your family, you got to love yourself, and you got to want to heal. And so this transition program, at least from the federal system, in the drug offender reentry court, has been very critical in helping these individuals, but it doesn't help them unless they really want it. So, it's just there's a lot of detail in the drug offender reentry program, but I just tell you that briefly to our master of ceremonies and to all the other individuals who are listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I can go next.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we have several transition programs. One of them is, as you know, Guam Behavioral is now in Department of Corrections. So we have the RSAT program, which is our residential substance abuse treatment program. That's a 6-month program that they go through, and then they transition into social support, which is our aftercare program, which we call the ROSH, which is a recovery oriented systems of care. So what we do is we assist them in transitioning back into the community by helping them get certain things that they need. Sometimes it's even housing prior to them leaving DOC. So sometimes we'd have to do referrals prior to them getting out of DOC over to the Lighthouse. Cottage homes is one of the, the former cottage homes is one of the programs that we will be utilizing once it's completed, to also assist those coming out of RSAT or anybody coming out of a 6-month program who can transition into a sober living home. So that's what we're trying to put together with the cottage homes. But currently what we're doing with the individuals in our ROSH program, the Recovery Oriented Systems of Care, a lot of them don't have any documentation, no paperwork. It's really hard to get them back on their feet. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing. Just trying to get an ID is so difficult. If they don't have a birth certificate or a social security card, I mean, just trying to get those things are challenging because there's a lot of documentation that goes into it. But we're so lucky that we have dedicated workers and individuals, not just caseworkers, but we're talking about our peer specialists, our peer recovery support specialists, who are our boots on ground and help individuals navigate to get those needs going. And that's part of the transition. You know, while they're doing that, they're doing some recovery talk, they're doing recovery coaching, just getting to American Job Center or getting to public health to get some health benefits. So those are all the transitions that we have to keep going and get done. And, you know, it's not just about getting identification, but it's about finding housing through GORA, getting family support. So that's just one of our transition programs. Majority of our programs that are outpatient, we still have to do a lot of transition with those individuals in terms of still helping them and doing intensive case management in terms of finding a job and reuniting with family. So, you know, in anything that they do, it's always a transition from assisting with being in long-term treatment and then now being in social support. That's a transition in itself. Or being in the 6-month program at the Lighthouse and then transitioning to outpatient work. That's a transition in itself. Do we need support? Of course we do. We always need support in this treatment field, but you know, we're lucky in the last several years that we've gotten a lot of support from our federal partners, the grants that have been coming out, and from all the support that we've been getting from our the administration.
Thank you very much for that. We would love to hear from all the panelists on this.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So when a person enters the 6 months residential program here at the LRC, we immediately start working towards discharge, which means, and it starts with the treatment planning. We look at all the deficits that the person has. A lot of our clients come in, like Athena said, without IDs. It's almost a catch-22. You need an ID to get a birth certificate, but you need a birth certificate to get an ID. So it's just, it can be insurmountable or seem insurmountable sometimes. But, you know, our clients don't just suffer from a substance use disorder. They suffer from other things. They have legal issues, they have homelessness, they have mental health conditions that need to be addressed. So in addition to the psychoeducational services, the therapeutic talk therapy that we do, and all the evidence-based groups we run, we do a lot of case management work to prepare them from when they step out of our door, because we can get anybody sober. But when they leave and they go back to the same environment that they came from, their chances of maintaining sobriety, you know, go down immensely. And so we're constantly looking at that. We do have an aftercare program where it's not as intensive. So like, for example, it might be 9 hours a week of engagement that a client receives. And then after they walk out of here, it slowly tapers off, but it's just staying connected with recovery. And maybe, you know, a lot of clients who have left our program and gone on to long-term sobriety, a year, 5 years, there is a theme throughout all their stories, and that's they stay connected with some kind of recovery community. And so after somebody completes core treatment here at the LRC, they are able to participate in a social support program. We have safe harbor and day treatment services where they get to come back and still utilize the facility. Additionally, we partner with GURA. And if a client comes in homeless, they may be able to participate in our aftercare housing project or program, where they will be, you know, we'll work with GURA to get them a place to stay. And they have to pay their portion and get back ours, which means that they have to still continually engage in treatment. But in addition to that, we partner with other agencies like Guam Behavioral Health, of course, but the Adult Drug Court, Guam Family Reunification Program, Reentry Court, and the United States Probation Office. We to help overcome some of those obstacles that our clients might be having to, to be transitioning back into purposeful life. How can it be approved? You know what? I think the biggest way that it can be approved is if we all work to just maybe decrease or erase the stigma of a substance use disorder. Yes, I understand that people have a substance use disorder. Number one, in itself, it's a criminal offense, and number two, the things that people do to get to feed the habit might, they might resort to. But we should also look at it as, yes, a public health concern and a mental health condition. And if we kind of look at it like that, maybe the barriers to receiving additional services outside of treatment will come down. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that we could do.
If I could just add, I forgot to mention that, for years, we've been working to try to figure out, especially Valerie and I, how to assist our consumers with receiving at least SNAP benefits, even if it's just temporary until they can, get on their feet or find a job, because they don't qualify with their felony. So it's taken years, but public health has taken the lead, and it's an awesome venture that we're in right now, in terms of a whole bunch of us from different agencies coming together, realizing that we may need to work on some changing some policies, some laws surrounding that. Our individuals with substance use disorders at least receiving some kind of SNAP benefit to get them off their feet. So we're doing that at present. You'll probably see it soon in the news, but you were talking about policies here and how, to assist with substance use disorder individuals, and that's one that's important, because a lot of individuals will end up back on the street or end up using again if they can't get any type of assistance. And part of it is being able to have some type of identification and then also putting food on the table, that's just one thing we're working on. And I'm really grateful for it, because it's a long time coming.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, Judge. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll wait until you're done. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just to build off what Athena said, we understand all the barriers, and we preach self-efficacy to our clients. It's not going to get, it's going to get a lot harder before it gets better, right? That's something we say a lot to our clients. But you got to push through it, and there's going to be barriers, and your recovery is going to be strengthened by how much effort you put into it. So yeah, we recognize barriers and we preach self-efficacy.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I wanted to add, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, so I'm a little off kilter here. So I apologize if I didn't think about this, but we do have a Second Chance Act in the federal court system. And what's really nice is our chief probation officer and our deputy chief Grace, and Kim Walmsley and Grace Flores, and all the other probation officers, Johnson, Nicholas, and so forth. They work on trying to ensure that when the defendants get off the plane and they're going to be hopefully transitioning into Guam in a safe manner and a good way, that they have a place to stay, that they have a home. And so they also work closely with Gura and other places, or even other hotels or other lodging facilities, to ensure that these defendants are not homeless when they come back home. I think that it's crazy, like Athena and Valerie discussed, that they don't have an ID card. I don't know why these defendants don't have an identification card upon arrival after they've been sentenced. So I suggest, I was thinking about this as I'm listening to all of you, is that before they're even sent off to prison, we have some ID put in their file here on Guam. Another transition process that my probation officers take care of is they try to work closely with all of the persons who are speaking today to ensure that these individuals try to prepare for a job interview, that they have their resumes prepared, that they have clothing. We have people that, we have a Carmen's Closet downstairs. I believe we still have that in our probation office, where they have clothing for the men and women who can appear at an interview that's appropriate for an interview. So there's just so many issues. And I think, as it was said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it does, it takes a whole village, it takes a whole island for us to all work together. I know we're all trying, but it's just, we just need to keep on coordinating as best we can. So thank you for allowing me to add that.
I wanted to add of a policy. Sorry, Jess. I wanted to add of a policy that, okay, so the best way I can explain it is a case I had an individual who was convicted, served his time, and was charged with murder. Comes out of Department of Corrections and qualifies for GURA housing. Someone else goes to jail, and because they were manufacturing marijuana, I believe it was 10 plants or more back in the early days, he serves his time, he comes out, and because the word manufacturing was tagged to his crime, he never will qualify for GURA. And I was like, so one person spent 18 years in DOC custody, comes out, gets food stamp welfare and insurance and GURA housing because he wasn't charged with a drug felony. And then somebody else who spends 4 years, 5 years in DOC custody because he was charged with manufacturing marijuana, doesn't qualify for food stamp, doesn't qualify for welfare. Good luck for him if he can get Medicaid, and will never qualify for GURA because of his felony conviction with regards to manufacturing. That was so frustrating. Just seeing how that policy played itself out is very frustrating. And so I think that if there's a policy we can look at, that's one of those policies, you know, where the title of their crime. So I think that it would be very beneficial if a person does get arrested and serves their time. I think that's a great thing. They are accountable for their behavior. But if they are released from DOC, couldn't they provide a successful completion of a registered treatment? And that would help them not erase, but, you know, be able to qualify for services like Department of Education, United States Department of Education. If you're convicted of a drug felony, you can qualify for student aid as long as you submit a document certifying that you successfully completed treatment. And so because Honorable Gatewood, she mentioned that I'm a person in recovery. I was a convicted felon in my own life, and I didn't qualify for student aid, but I was determined to become a counselor. I had to fight with UOG, well, not literally fight, but, you know, advocate with UOG because I almost couldn't go to school. And then while I was going to school, food stamp and welfare, because I was a single parent, was telling me that I needed to go to school full time. And I'm like, I am going to school full time. And then they tried to tell me I'm going to lose my benefits because I'm not going to school full time for high school. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've already completed high school. I'm trying to get out of the system. And so it was a fight on almost every level. And so those are policies that are in place, and really sometimes they work, but then sometimes they really do work as a disadvantage to those that, you know, we don't have a job, we want to get a better education, and yet at every level we're trying to move up, and then there's all these policies that pull us back down. So I just thought I'd share that. I'm getting passionate here. I'll just.
Hi, I like to touch on what Chris said earlier, that treatment, it's a catch-22, right? The IDs, you need this, you need that. When I got out of federal prison, all I had was my BOP ID, and I thought, okay, it's a federal ID, it'll work for me. to no avail. I had to go get a social security card. In order for me to get a Guam ID, I need a social security card. In order for me to get a social security card, I needed a Guam ID. And birth certificate, it was going back and forth. It was very frustrating and stressful, and now that I am a parole advisor for individuals that are transitioning from incarceration through RSAT out into society, I'm learning how to assist in their struggle, because it's a difficult journey to come out of prison with just the clothes on your back. At least with the federal prison system, they give you money when you leave. I was afforded like $140 or $150 to get on the plane, come on Guam for food and travel. But here on Guam, they release you with nothing but the clothes on your back. It's like, good luck, see you later. And it's like you're almost set up for failure. So being a parole advisor, it has been very, very tasking on me, because trying to navigate the treacherous waters of getting up on your feet is an emotional, mental, and physical process for these individuals, and guiding them to ensure that they don't slip back and give up hope because of the difficulty of it all. It's also we need more resources out there. We need more individuals out there who more providers. So some friends and I have already garnered our nonprofit organization, to open up a transitional home for individuals who are transitioning after treatment. So the treatment providers can focus on the treatment aspect. And in turn, in conjunction, we will help focus them on garnering their resume, their IDs, finding them places to stay and such. While one aspect is the treatment is being focused on, we'll handle the other aspects. That way it takes off the stress and the load off of the provider solely, because there's a lot on the provider's plates. And the more numbers that come in, the more that's what they just are numbers. Ms. Val and Ms. Athena has always been passionate about what they do. And it's, if everything takes off with what this potential venture that I'm going to, go on, then that's going to be another contributing factor to the recovery community. But there are a lot of transitional programs out there. It's just a difficult, treacherous process to navigate. And it takes a lot of desire, will, and strength for individuals to pull through with it. But it is possible. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. Those were wonderful responses. And don't be sorry about being passionate. Like, we love those passionate responses. Like, it's amazing to see. So moving to our next question, I would like to see if you guys have any more input on this one. Okay, I'll be moving on to the next one. The island has become aware of more adolescents using substances. In your experience, what are the best methods of prevention, and how does your agency communicate that information to the public?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Hey, no worries. I'll repeat it. So the question is, the island Guam has become aware of more adolescents using substances. In your experience, what are the best methods of preventing like our youth, and how does your agency communicate that information to them or to the public?
Okay, so I could just tell you that and you said in my experience, so as you know, I've been a Superior Court judge, and now I'm a federal judge, but I've also been I've been a prosecutor, both on Guam and in Kansas City, Missouri. So I've handled some of the juveniles, and so let me just say, how do we communicate information for adolescents? I think that for me, the biggest way that we do it is we do it through either community outreach when our court goes out to the schools. We do it through the court system when our parents commit drug crimes at the federal level. I'm very hard about that. I'm hard on the families because I really feel that if you as a parent don't have it together, you have no right to raise your child. And so it just brings it to so many other questions of what then happens to the child, well, or the children of parents who are involved in drugs, or even children whose parents are not involved, but those children who themselves are being uh, tempted in school and with friends. And I just think that, oftentimes education begins at home. And if it's not happening at home, it begins at school. And if it's not happening there, then where does it begin? It's very difficult. It's a different world today. Um, I think the best methods of prevention clearly are education. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Any of the
I,
panelists?
sure, I can go next. Thank you. I really like this question. Yes, we are aware that there's more substance use among adolescents, and man, the Guam police has so much going on in this arena, and actually, what we're doing is really trying is prevention. We partner with Manietlu. Today, as a matter of fact, there's a cleanup with the Thrive Coalition, the Derrido Drug Free Organization. The Guam Police Department is helping them do a village cleanup with some of the parks by Benavente Middle School. Manietlu is one of our longtime partners. We've sometimes we have targeted programs for areas where we've had problems with adolescents, youth. We've gone through Hemlani's apartments, especially, and kind of brought our services to them, along with what Manilu does. We used, of course, pre-pandemic, we had an annual kickball tournament, and that it was a very competitive kickball tournament. I mean, hundreds of students from the elementary schools came out, very competitive. But really, it wasn't just about competing. It was about the opportunity to get the message, to get these children to resist drugs and alcohol. We formed Project U, and Project U is a very engaging program that we used to target some of our at-risk youth to either help them keep away from drugs, gangs, and alcohol, but also to provide them a more positive environment. We had a summer youth camp last year, and it involved Guam behavioral health groups. It involved the Guam Trades Academy. So we have so much going on with our youth that I mean I can sit here all day and tell you about each and every one of them, but we have to allow for others to talk. But really, I believe that we need to target the youth, because if we don't target the youth and help prevent and keep them off of drugs or alcohol, they may be the next, the next, they may just move up and be the next drug user or substance abuse user. So we want to prevent that. And we engage many programs and many different youth at various levels. So yeah, I'm really excited about this question. And I think prevention, like Chief Judge Gatwood said, is the best key. Preventing it from happening, because if you prevent them from getting into drugs, alcohols, and gangs, then I think we're going to have a very successful youth become adults. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Any of the panelists, you are more than welcome to put your intake on this.
Yeah, I love this question. This is my favorite question of all the questions, because I do believe I empathize with the chief and the GPD officers, because they see firsthand the ugliness out there that the children of Guam have to go through with parents who struggle with drug addiction and drug use. But I do believe education is utterly important, and the environment that the child is growing up in. One thing is, if we focus a lot of energy on our youth, we bottleneck it there, and it doesn't continue to grow. That way, our resources that are already stressed can be more focused on the adult addicts that are still struggling. and we cut him off at the youth level. It's bottlenecked, like I said earlier. But I do love this question, and I do believe education, culturally tying in our community as one, like we used to back in the day, which is probably seems like a monumental task to do so, is also crucial to our kids. The judge said earlier, it takes a community to raise a child, and I believe if we all look out for one another and our best interest, then we can help our kids. But education is the most important thing out there. We get out there and we educate the kids, but I think we need someone on their level, someone who is not a kid, but yet not our age, someone who is more relatable, and here I am now, I'm old, someone who's like maybe 21, 22, who can relate more to the children and understand, because I forgot what it feels like to be 15, 16, 17, but I would love to really focus a lot of my time and services on helping out the youth. So if any of you out there, have any programs that, you would like me to be a part of, I would love to be a part of the youth programs. That's all I got. Thank you.
Are there any other inputs from our panelists? Okay, I'll be moving on to the questions submitted by our audience from our Zoom chat. So first question is, would it be profitable to look into a program similar to that initiated in Seattle, Washington, called the LEAD program, the Law Enforcement Assisted Arrest Diversion Program, a collaborative community safety effort that offers law enforcement accredited alternatives to booking people into jail for criminal activity that stems from unmet behavioral health needs or property. This program diverts individuals who engage in low-level drug crime away from criminal legal system, bypassing prosecution and jail time, and connects them with intensive case managers who can provide crisis response. That is our first question from the Zoom chat.
I will take a stab, but I would like to defer that, of course, to our Chief of Police, Ignacio, for his expertise on that. But I will say that it's always good to have alternative dispute resolution before prosecution on low-level crimes. It's always good to do that. I believe in that. But it really takes a lot of policy makers. It takes a lot of social workers, the police officer organizations, the substance abuse treatment providers. I mean, it takes a lot of people to organize that. So now you're talking about an additional program, which is excellent, because you don't want some of these low-level crimes to be prosecuted. You don't want them, because they just need help. These defendants need help. You don't want these individuals to have a felony conviction on their back their entire life. They don't deserve that. I don't think so, especially if they're young, impressionable, and it's a small criminal offense. But I'll tell you this, it's a huge public health policy to curbing substance abuse, a substance use disorder that I think could be valuable, but it's just going to take a lot of money. And I shouldn't say, but I'm just going to say it does take a lot of money. And that's all I have to say. Do I believe in it? I think in some instances, it's a good idea. I believe in diversion. I believe in deferred guilty plea. I do believe in alternative dispute resolution. If the crime is more serious, then I do believe in full prosecution. But I would like to defer this, of course, to our Chief of Police, who works hard and has his officers work hard each day. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. All the panelists, so go ahead.
Thank you, Chief Judge, for that. So unfortunately, we don't have laws, policies, or procedures that allow for a program like LEAP. But I will tell you though, through my experience, when stakeholders come together, I think we can formulate policies and come up with decisions that best benefit, really the people that need the help. So I'll give you an example. Back in 2004, I was assigned to Highway Patrol Division. And when I got there, I noticed that there were over 1,000 people that were being arrested annually for DUI. And I think we hit the breaking point one night. Ms. Val talked about earlier about somebody getting arrested on Monday for possession, and then they get booked and released, and they're arrested on Wednesday for possession. One night I had a frustrated officer come into the office before securing, and he just looked really upset, and I approached him and said, "Hey, what's going on? What's your problem?" And he goes, "I just arrested this guy at 10 o'clock for DUI. We have a book and release policy. I released him. He went to the payphone, called a cab, took a cab back to his car, got in his car and drove again. I noticed the same car. I pulled it over and I arrested the guy 2 hours later for DUI again." And he goes, we got to stop this because we're just going around in circles here. And I kind of see that now again with these people that are being arrested for ICE or meth possession, these street level offenses. But what we did back then is that myself, Department of Corrections, Judge Lamarena, who still oversees the DOI court, and there's a couple other stakeholders. We got into the room and said, what can we do to try and reduce alcohol abuse and drunk driving? And really, we were concerned about drunk driving because we know that they're dangerous drivers. They can be involved in a lot of fatalities in our roadways. So we came up with just a simple policy of book and confine. And what we did is that effective from a date moving forward, anybody that was arrested, and still holds true to this day, the policy is still in place. If you get arrested for drunk driving, you will be confined. The AGs played a role in this. And when the AGs got involved, they agreed to hold them for 2 days, which was in line with the minimum requirement to when you plead guilty or are convicted of a first offense DUI, you have to serve a minimum of 48 hours. So kind of that 2 days that they spend in jail when they first get arrested meets the minimum requirements so that when they enter a plea deal, they've already met that requirement, and so that they don't have to spend an additional 2 days. But really, it helped drive down the DUI arrests. After we implemented the book and confine policy, we went from over 1,000 arrests to just a little bit over 600. So almost by 40 to 45% decrease in the number of arrests. And I thought that policy was great. And so, I'm open for any discussion with any of the stakeholders, about how we can work to have a diversion program for those who have a meth addiction, because I think that's the biggest problem facing our community. And the other thing is, when these those that are addicted to crystal meth or ice, they go around and they have to commit petty crimes, or sometimes even bigger than petty crimes, right, to support their addiction. And people see that the problem is only related to the law enforcement community. It's a crime problem. But really, if you dig deeper, we're just addressing the crime problem, really the symptom. The bigger issue is the addiction. And so really, I will be more than glad to engage with anybody that wants to work with the Guam Police, or the Guam Police will work with anybody to see how we can come up with programs, yes, to get these people away from their addiction. Because I think if we work on the addiction problem, that'll really solve the other problems with crime that they're committing to support their addiction. So yeah, I've always said that the problem of fighting crystal meth on the island shouldn't just be relegated to the law enforcement community or the Guam Police Department, because the problem is bigger than the Guam Police Department. Thank you very much. And thank you for that question.
Thank you, Chief. Any more?
Yeah, hi, this is Athena again. Yeah, so I know that our department, Guam Behavioral Health Awareness Center, is working closely with GPD We're trying to provide more crisis intervention, and this is, mostly for our behavioral health clientele, but it also is inclusive of our individuals with co-occurring disorders with a substance use disorder. So, we're gearing up to train more people. I know GPD is also providing wonderful trainings as well that are coming up just next week. So I know Valerie and I have worked on many grants together, and part of it was diversion grants. So we'll be more than happy to, work with GPD and bring you to the table, because I know Bureau of Justice, the BJA, when they put out grants, it's usually to involve law enforcement, especially in terms of diversion. So I think we're going to be looking out for some of those grants, and we'll give you a call, Chief, if that's okay. Partnerships.
So in working, yeah, partners, in working with substance use disorder, especially amphetamine use disorder, the 10 days is the magic number. If a person can stay off of the substance for at least 7 to 10 days, the very high level craving and that, I can't quite put my finger on it, I need to go get high, it kind of drops, well, not kind of, it drops substantially. So maybe, Athena, we need to look at 7 to 10 days, book and confine. Just, then at least that way when they get released, they're not drug seeking as severely as they would if Chief puts them in on a Friday and then they get released on Saturday morning and they're already smoking before they left the Department of Corrections. You know what I mean? Because that's just the reality of the disease. Just an idea.
Any further inputs on the question at this time? Okay, I would like to announce, we'll be having a 5-minute break to gather questions from the audience. Please enjoy these public service announcements, and we'll reconvene shortly. Thank you. I'll be back. I'm gonna find out if they
If you don't dispose of the unneeded medications in your home, they might find a new one. They could end up lost, stolen, or simply misused. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back at the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Help DEA keep our communities safe and healthy.
Is left to perpetrate and spread.
How did this epidemic begin? It's a crisis 30 years in the making.
Bottom line, too many Americans are suffering from too much pain, and doctors aren't doing enough to stop it.
In this country, there was a long-running puritanical attitude towards pain, and it resulted in almost a barbaric undertreatment of pain, particularly when it came to people with cancer and in the terminal stages of cancer.
there had to be better treatment for people in serious pain. So there was a whole effort to open up minds to allow hospice care and good pain management for people with cancer. And then that spread into AIDS because people with AIDS often had very serious pain problems.
Doctors had long avoided prescribing opioid painkillers for fear of addicting their patients. That changed with the emergence of the hospice movement.
That movement collides with an opportunistic drug company in the form of Purdue Pharma. They see the opportunity to expand the use of these drugs beyond the cancer wards, kind of into the mainstream of medicine. And the drug that becomes the vehicle through which they do that is a drug called OxyContin.
OxyContin is one of America's new prescription wonder drugs. It's a powerful pain.
OxyContin was not really a new drug. The molecule had been around since 1916. What they did is they took this old existing drug and they introduced a time release mechanism into it so that it would be significantly less addictive because it wouldn't be released up front all at once. That's how they pitched it to the FDA.
Purdue Pharma marketed it to doctors who were prescribing drugs for all manner of ailments to common ordinary folks who were not dying of cancer. To them, OxyContin initially looked like a godsend. It looked like this wonder drug, like all of a sudden we can give this and we don't need to prescribe 8 Vicodin a day.
There is no question that the marketing of OxyContin was the most aggressive marketing of a narcotic drug ever undertaken by a pharmaceutical producer.
If you don't dispose of the unneeded medications in your home, they might find a new one. They could end up lost, stolen, or simply misused. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back at the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Help DEA keep our communities safe and healthy.
Welcome back, everyone. Now we are moving on to more audience questions. And our second question is, how can we deal with drug traffickers? This is open to all the panelists. Whoever wants to go first can take the mic.
Well, let me just say that from my vantage point, how do we deal with drug traffickers is when they're brought into court, and if they either plead guilty or they're found guilty by a jury or a judge, then I sentence them and I look at what is the most appropriate sentence. And so more often than not, the defendants go to prison. And so when I formulate a sentencing decision, the decision is based on the recommendations by the prosecution, the defense, and my U.S. probation officer, whom I rely on a lot. They prepare a pre-sentence report, so I look at the background of the defendant, and I ascertain should there be a judicial recommendation for a substance abuse treatment program while the defendant's in prison. Should there be a judicial recommendation for a certain facility, a certain designated prison off island, because there's a lot of prisons in the federal system. So the Bureau of Prisons will more often than not look at my recommendations as a federal judge and then determine whether they will designate a person to that facility, because that facility may have a substance abuse program or residential treatment program. And the defendant, if they have a sentence of more than 2 years, they can at least get that opportunity to get into that program. And if they successfully complete that drug treatment program, they'll have 1 year taken off their sentence, their federal sentence. So if I sentence them to 10 years, they may have it reduced down to 9 years. Because the goal is to make sure that when they re-enter, come back to Guam or wherever they go to, they will be drug-free. That doesn't always happen, but at least we're working on that. There's also issues of dealing with these traffickers as, not only the drug usage issue, but do they, the goal is, okay, are they going to go back in the community, like I said? So do they need training? Do they need education? Do we make a judicial recommendation at the federal system to get them into certain programs while in the system? And then the whole issue of when they come out of the system is another matter, and we just kind of go through that similar process. But that's how I deal with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Anyone want to?
Sure. Yeah, the Guam Police Department, of course, we deal with the drug traffickers at many different levels. On the local level, we have our own narcotics unit that does investigations on narcotics trafficking. Not only the street level, mid level, but also the drug trafficking individuals. At the federal level, we have task force officers, so what we call TFOs, at DEA, FBI, ATF, U.S. Postal Service, and Secret Service. So we fight drug trafficking on many fronts. How do we deal with it? Of course, we deal with it through arrest, and we go through we put them into the criminal justice system. And so that's how we fight drug trafficking at many fronts. And that's that's really our job at the law enforcement level, is to combat the drug problem in Guam by trying to identify and arrest drug traffickers. And that's really how we take a bite out of the drug trafficking issue on our island.
Hi, for me, I can attest to what the Chief Justice has said because she put me in jail. But yeah, my federal offense, I was sentenced to 3 years of incarceration. And then, but there's a distinction. We have drug traffickers and we have drug users. I'm not a treatment provider, so everything I say and speak is solely my opinion, right? So I believe that the drug users should be afforded the treatment possibilities out there. Okay, the drug traffickers should be incarcerated. Now, the question becomes now the length of incarceration, because the longer an individual, in my personal opinion, is incarcerated, the more institutionalized he becomes. The less of a time an individual is incarcerated, the more he's still connected to his old style and habits. So there is that medium in between where now what is the proper line of sentencing for a drug trafficker? For when I was in treatment, I remember something to the fact of 18 months it takes our brain to come back to that certain point where it was before any drug use. So if as a drug trafficker, I was sentenced to 3 years incarceration, I found that length of time was suitable enough for myself to recollect my thoughts and not get institutionalized in the process because I wasn't in there for 7, 10, 15, 20 years. It's a lot more difficult for an individual to reintegrate into society where all he's known mentally is prison. But there are cases where individuals who have been incarcerated for 25, 27 years have been released and integrated easily back into society without any hiccups because of several primary supports that he has. One would have been his family, their family support network. Another one would have been that individual training their mindset throughout the years of incarceration to prepare themselves for that eventual day of freedom. So with regards to drug traffickers, I do believe that there should be a medium of time sentence. And that's why the federal system has the sentencing guidelines, because it coincides with the level of punishment with the level of the crime. And it's up to each individual how they decide to handle their lives after incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. We'll be jumping to the next question from the audience. What would be the next steps for our community as a whole to combat this epidemic or / crisis?
You know that, thank you to our master of ceremonies again. That is such a open-ended question, of course. I think the next step is always to make it an annual step. And that is really to convene the proper stakeholders, the one who cares, the people that care, people like Valerie and Athena and Mr. Mendiola and the chief and everybody else that are on anybody else on the panel today. I mean, you need the people that really care and want to make a difference and have a very focused approach locally, federally. I mean, one of the things that the chief of police indicated was that he has his officers be part of the drug task force, FBI, Secret Service, and that's really good. But we really need, honestly, what I see from my position as a federal judge, also as a former prosecutor, is we need better coordination, more trust, more respect amongst all the agencies, and a better understanding and knowledge that is passed on about treatment and about the difference between a trafficker and a user and so forth. So to me, it's really like a summit that has to always constantly be, brought out every year. I mean, we just need to just constantly pound it into the minds and the hearts and the souls of all community members who it affects, because this substance abuse disorder affects everyone. It really does. So I think it's really just that, as far as I'm concerned. And so thank you for that question.
Anyone has any input on that question?
Yeah,
I went to a conference.
Sorry, go ahead, Val.
So I went to a conference, I think it was with Miss Athena, and there was a presenter there that said something that kind of resonated with me, and it's not in my backyard. And so it's kind of like, oh no, you're not going to do that in my area. You know what I mean? So I think as a community, we all need to agree that we're not going to allow drug activities around our area. For me, if I see drug activity, I'm going to record it and I'm going to let them see me that I'm recording it. So I don't know if that's just me, but not in my backyard. And it's not okay that you're my neighbor and that you're using drugs and you have traffic. So I will sit outside, I will record, and I'll, let them know I'm watching them. And then pretty soon, before you know it, they're all gone. And that's exactly what I want. I don't want them in my area. And maybe that just stuck with me because it's unacceptable. Drug use and alcohol use in my home is unacceptable. And that extends to the surroundings in my area. So a lot of times I was told by certain folks, it's like, oh yeah, Miss Val, every time they go around your area, they all want to leave because they're scared. And I'm like, well, that's good, then stay away. But that's my personal opinion. My professional opinion is that we all need to come together as a community and come up with policies that help strengthen recovery. And the fact that when we work with family, it's the whole family that gets better. And Chris, Athena, and we have seen not just the grandparent, we've seen the child, and now we are seeing their grandchildren. And so we know that it's already going from one generation to the other. And so I think that if we come up with strong policies that, get them into treatment, I think that we can help stop it from that process, from that point to the next generation.
Yeah, and so I'm not a educator nor am I a policymaker, and so I don't know the impediments that are present to what I'm about to say. But get them while they're young. Stop the next generation from developing a substance use disorder. I mean, we have sex ed in school to help prevent the transmission of STIs or unwanted pregnancy. I think we should have a drug diversion program in school. Right. And I don't know if parents have to positive consent for participation, but I think educating the parents on, the benefits of talking to their kids about drugs, sex, all these things that are a part of society. Our children are inundated with images of sex and drug use and violence on TV, and we have to find a way to counteract that. So get them while they're young, man. I mean, in addition to that, I mean, yeah, what they say about idle hands, right? Maybe we need more after-school programs to prevent the generation that's coming up from developing a substance use disorder, right? I don't know what the impediments are to reaching that, but maybe it's something that we should look into. I know that the Lighthouse Recovery Center, like next week, we're going to do an outreach at the Agana Shopping Center. Yeah, next week and to help educate the public about drug use. Or drugs in the community, right? I teach a class at UOG, and a part of my curriculum is drug use. And when I ask my class about, their familiarity with drugs, sometimes I get just blank stares, like they've never been exposed to it. I'm like, you know what? That's so that's a complete 180 from what I experienced at work. I mean, so there was something that happened in their lives or something that didn't happen in their lives that allowed them to get to the point where they have no idea about drugs and they're in school. And, I don't know what that is, but, I know that a strong prevention program in schools would probably help to combat the problem or combat the crisis of drug use in the community.
Thank you all for your responses. So there's one question from a resident in California, former Guam resident. So his question is, I'm a former Guam resident now residing in California, and I'm curious to know if drug use in Guam is higher than national averages. Are we continuing to see an increase, or are we doing well in decreasing drug use?
Let me just say, I don't know the specific answer to that question. I could have researched that, but I don't really know. So maybe somebody else knows. I will just tell you this from my own experience as a prosecutor, former prosecutor, local judge, and now federal judge. I just know that we've gone from marijuana to, we did have heroin in the early 80s, and now the drug of choice is methamphetamine. I also know that having worked in the field of law as a prosecutor and a judge for close to 40 years, that the family unit has broken down a lot. And has been mentioned by Christopher, who also does a very good job. Chris, I'm sorry I didn't also give you a lot of credit. You and Athena and Valerie are also angels in this whole process of combating substance abuse. But I just do know that the families are disintegrating, which is sad. I mean, we are locals here, and we're all very close, and families usually help families. I didn't, before, rarely did I see a mother, a father, a baby mommy, baby mama, baby daddy smoking, taking drugs, snorting, whatever they're doing in front of their child. Now we see it a lot. Or leaving their child in the car and so forth. I mean, there's a whole bunch of more complicated crime scenes and criminal acts by these substance abuse defendants. So I see more of that coming to our island, storming our shores, which is really sad. I mean, Guam is a beautiful place to live. It's generally peaceful, but when you start seeing this, you see the breakdown of the family, and that is sad for the generations to come if we don't come to grips with this disorder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Any more input on this question?
Sure. Okay,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Chief.
McDonald, go ahead. No, you first, sir.
Okay, I want to touch on what the Chief Justice said about the family falling apart. I've witnessed in my family fathers smoking, getting high with their sons, with their daughters. I've witnessed them as little children first, running around the yard, playing with their toys, laughing, having a good old life, doing what kids do. And then as the years went on, somewhere along the line, they picked up the actions of their parents. And somewhere further along the line, them and their parents shared in one sitting the same actions that the parents were doing on their own. So it was an entire 3 generations, not wiped out, but a statistic of drug use. And it's a huge indicator that when you have a father and a mother getting high with their children, not just one child, all of their children, that speaks volumes of how we as a community must really come together to combat this, because more families are going to be destroyed. And I do not want Guam to end up looking like one of the projects back there in the mainland, because at its current rate, I'm going to call a spade, and I can foresee it being like that. And so, it kind of hit close to home. And when I heard that the words family falling apart, because that's true, that's very much true. So do I see an increase in drugs, or are we doing well in decreasing the drugs? Personally, from my opinion, I think we're managing it, and that's as much as can be done, is managing it. The more people get involved, the more impact we can all have. I'll pass the floor over to the Chief now. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mendiola. Yeah. So, like the judge said, we didn't have I don't have numbers in front of us. I don't have numbers in front of me of whether or not we have a higher than national average substance abuse. At least from the Guam police perspective, I have seen an increase in the number of arrests, especially, like I said, at the street level. We're running into it's not uncommon anymore for us to pull over a car, especially late at night, early in the morning, and we're finding paraphernalia associated with drug use, especially methamphetamine. And so, what can we do? Again, the judge talked about it, and the other partners here today talked about it. Really, if we continue to tackle this individually as agencies, I don't think we're ever going to get anywhere. But I think we need to continue to have the conversation. I think this forum itself is a great way to continue to have that conversation, but continue the conversation, because if we leave today and we never talk about it again, then we're not never. I don't think we're ever going to get anywhere. Again, the more we talk about it, the more we develop programs, the more we come up with solutions and ideas. I think the better off we are as a community. But so long as we continue to try and tackle it individually, I think it's a disservice to our community. And like Athena said, she's willing to call me, and I'm willing to sit down and listen, because I think we need to work together to develop diversion programs so that we can get people to the help they need, because really that's how we get them off their addiction. Thank you.
I know that Valerie and I, we collaborated on a grant I think in 2020, and we found an article that kind of told us in 2017 there was a number of arrests of like 217 for possession, and then a huge spike in 2018 of 11,000. So if you're asking if it's increased, I would say yes. And this was published in the PDN. So I was just like, what? So, we use that information to help us write grants to show this is what's happening in our community right now. And we really need the assistance. So.
Thank you all for your responses. There are many great questions on the chat, but due to our time limit for the forum, we'll address them later on. Our MPA candidates will respond to the questions if you provide them with your emails. So I would like to take this time to thank our panelists for participating in today's forum. We hope that the discussions brought to the table today will help initiate the movement to policy change by applying public health policy to substance use disorder for Guam's community. On behalf of Professor Ron Ogden's PA540 administrative law class and the University of Guam School of Business and Public Administration, Masters of Public Administration's program, we would like to extend a huge thank you to all the attendees and collaborators as a result of our progressive dialogue today. Panelists, we welcome you to provide 1-minute closing remarks, and we will use the same order as the introductions, and we will start off with the Honorable Chief Judge Francis Tadinko Gateway.
Thank you to Warren and to our Joelle Warren and to Professor McNinch's class, and to everybody who is on the panel with me. I'm very pleased to have been on this panel, especially because everybody on this panel actually knows and understands the problem and are dedicated. I feel they're all as dedicated as much as I'm dedicated, so that makes me feel more inspired to speak. And thank you, Mr. Uggen, too. I see Ron Uggen there, Professor Uggen. I will say that the only thing I can say is there hope? Yes, there's always hope. And is there hope for our island? Absolutely. Is there hope for healing of all these individuals who suffer from substance abuse? The answer is yes. Is there hope for their families? The answer is yes. But you know what? Hope means that we need a lot of money to put into these programs and to all of these collaborations and to these networking and to this cross management. We really need that. And it all starts with our leaders, whether it's local or federal leaders. If they want to make a difference, they can. And that's how I see that it's going to be made a difference if we all come together as many times as possible to address the issue and be very laser focused about how it can be stopped or at least prevented in a substantial way so that we can save our families, save our culture, and save our island. Dunklin Isizos Masi for inviting me to.
We'd love to have you, Your Honor. That was wonderful. Thank you. Can go ahead.
Thank you very much. To my fellow panelists, thank you for having me along with you. Truly great to work alongside all of you and the expertise that you bring to Dr. McNinch and Professor Ogden and the MPA class. It is an honor to sit before all of you, even if it is via Zoom, and present my thoughts and ideas on this very important issue Again, what do we do from here? I get, if we don't continue to talk about it, we're going to forget about it, and we're going to not be able to better serve our community. But this is what I have to say: never give up the fight. We must continue to fight for those that need help, fight against the traffickers that bring drugs in, but most importantly, like the judge said, fight to keep our families intact and keep them away from the substance abuse disorders that they suffer. And the Guam Police Department always stands ready to do its part and work together with the community and its partners to address the substance use disorders that we have in our community. So thank you very much for having me. It is a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Director Valley Regis. Thank you, Mr. Francisco, Ms. Athena Duenas, and Mr. Jesse Mendiola. Due to time restraints, we have to close this out real quick. But in closing, we would like to give to our professor, Ron Ogden, to help us end with his closing remarks.
Just deep appreciation for everyone for enlightening us and sharing what your programs are all about. Without your programs, I just can't think how bad Guam will be without your support and your enthusiasm for helping people who needs help with substance abuse. I can say firsthand, well, first of all, I had a little script there, but I'm throwing that out because after hearing your commentaries, my mind is just scrambling. So the first thing I want to talk about is, mention is, I do have first-hand experience with as far as family. There's no boundaries, like you all have mentioned. There are no boundaries. It affects everyone across all walks of life. I've had a family member in his 30s who was so bad off. He's a good person, but when the drug use really set him off on bad behavior. He stole my niece's collection of Barbie dolls. I think she had about 50 or 60 to support his ice habit. I have one young nephew who had a bad problem with the abuse problem with the prescription drugs. He goes around raiding medicine cabinets for oxycodone. So I do have that connection with respect to just how bad things can be. From that firsthand experience, we talked about mentioned about activities for the young people. I think that's really important. We had a nonprofit organization years ago called Island Sports League Association, where we would get the disadvantaged youths together and have them play sports activities. And every time after the sports activities, quite a few of them would come up and give us a hug and thank us for giving them that opportunity to get together and just have a good time. And some of these were really young kids, and that was really heartening because, as you all mentioned, there's a story behind every individual that goes on that pathway, and we just don't really know how to. We keep trying to keep them off those pathways, but we don't really know how we can do it permanently, so to speak. Everyone has this story. So the other thing I wanted to mention is Judge Gatewood. Thank you so much, Judge Francis, for giving us the opportunity, and me and my students, to attend the door sessions. And the first time I attended it, I was really impressed because it wasn't an adversarial type of atmosphere. It was, you had yourself, the prosecutor, defense, and your support group getting together as a team, trying to help the participants. And I thought that was really impressive. I did notice in one of the sessions where you had a mother and son in the same session that you had to deal with, that you had to help, and that was really disheartening. Then you had someone who, after praising him for being a good boy, so to speak, he went down and got a drug test, and lo and behold, he tested positive. I remember that, and he had to go up and defend himself. But the DOOR program is really a great program, and as I understand it, Judge, I think the district court was one of the first to implement the program. So it's kind of it is a pioneering effort for these types of programs. I think, let's see. And again, appreciation for everyone taking your time to enlighten us with your important programs. I'd like to express a deep appreciation also to Judge Francis for taking the time from Washington, D.C. to participate and enlighten us with respect to what the court is doing. I'm sure you're recovering from jet lag, and that's why we really appreciate it. Along with the Chief and Athena and Jesse and Valerie and Chris, thank you so much. And to our MPA class, a job well done. So you'll get an A after this.
Your call, Warren. All right. One more closing remark from our chair, Renee Carpella.
Thank you very much for having me go ahead and say our closing remarks following our Professor Uggen. So thank you again, panelists and Professor Uggen. The Master of Public Administration candidates put together this forum, not only to break the stigmas associated with substance use disorder, but also to demonstrate that the different agencies, whether they're governmental agencies, nonprofit organizations, or private business partners, that we can all come together to have these discussions to analyze where the gaps are in treating substance use disorder, especially how taking the public health approach can be the most effective and efficient method to reduce the cost of crime and public safety by also providing a room for improving the welfare of our citizens, thus creating a safer community and allowing for better days ahead. I hope that this forum answers some questions for our attendees, and we encourage everyone to seek help earlier rather than later. Thank you and have a great weekend. Adios.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Professor Ogden. This forum is now concluded. A post survey will be sent out to the email you use to register to this forum. We appreciate your feedback. Thank you. And again, have a wonderful weekend.